And I have no problem with alcohol. I just don't have any desire, really. I've been a sugar addict like my whole life, but it really didn't start affecting me. Austin's a really special place that there's a lot going on that doesn't involve alcohol, which is so helpful. Like, I want to be so energized, and whenever I overeat, it like tanks me for the next 3 hours. And then a big part of it, I was still binging on even healthy food. Totally. It's such a loop of the mind to do that. That's such an interesting study and makes so much sense.
Welcome to the Willpower Podcast. Do you do that for your podcast? Do you ever lead people through that?
No, but I probably should. I try to do deep breaths, not like pray before, and I put a hand on my heart. But usually when I have a guest on, I don't often like provide.
It can be nice too. I've been doing that because Cyan will lead that with the co-working group at the beginning of our like drop in, where everyone gets to just like share something. And so I took that from her and started using it with guests. But I find myself being a little self-conscious sometimes, being like, are they going to be down for this? Like, hey man, can we do some deep breaths? But it always like goes over so well. And then they're like, that was great. I'm glad we did that.
Oh yeah, so, I bet.
Cool.
And just being able to ground and have the permission to just sit for a second, especially I'm sure anxieties and stuff for people. Yeah.
I mean, going on a podcast can be a little intimidating if it's not something you normally do, especially.
Totally.
Sharing a lot of, your story to like, you don't really know who's going to listen. And yeah. So that's a good way to get in. Okay. So let's talk about Comfort Zone Friday to start. Cause that's how I know you. I last year probably went like every week for like 9 months straight or something. It was like a part of my routine and I loved it. So I'd love to hear you could just share what it is and then how it came to be.
Yeah. So Comfort Zone Fridays is a Friday morning meetup that we've done for the last 5 years. So at 6:30 a.m., a group of people, we meet, we do yoga, breath work, and ice baths and meditation. And the intention of the group was to build community. So doing hard things together is the hashtag. And it's just the connection that's built when we are waking up really early, when we're pushing ourselves, and then doing something really uncomfortable like an ice bath. It builds so much, just such a beautiful community. And the type of person that shows up to that, I always say this in the beginning, it's such a special type of person who's willing to do something like that. And so it started out of my own desire to build community and connection. It used to be called ATX Wim Hof Group, but then it got bigger, and then like the licensure of Wim Hof, they reached out, so I needed to change the name, but it ended up being super perfect. But we used to jump into Barton Springs pool, but I'd moved to Austin, and I had gone to a Joe Dispenza like weekend in Houston, and I was sitting next to a guy who happened to be from Austin, and I was just like, you want to connect when we get back? Like, I just had this urge to jump in cold water, and I did not know what Wim Hof was. Like, this is before that like really blew up. And so we woke up really early. It was like 5:30, I think, on a Friday morning, and he invited his friend Paolo there, and so it was us three, and they taught me Wim Hof breathing that morning. And I was like, guys, I love this. And it was really because I just felt so connected to them, and I felt like I had friends that were like doing things that I wanted to be doing. Like, I had moved out of my kind of like, in my college days in like early 20s was drinking a lot and was just like partying, and I was very much more entrepreneurial now at that point, and I just didn't want to be doing that socially. So I wanted to find groups that were like doing breath work. So I was just like, do you want to meet every week and do this? And they're like, okay. So I was like, I'm just going to throw it up on Meetup and see if anyone shows up. And people started showing up. And then I was a yoga teacher at the time and had led classes, so I started making it like a little routine. So it was just very organic. We used to like journal and do breath work, and then we'd all jump in together, which was fun. And then I realized like, oh, what if we did, like I brought in yoga and we did this flow. And then the group just kept growing, and 5 years later, it's just become such an amazing community, and it birthed so much for me, like Comfort Zone retreats. The retreats came from that group. Yeah, it really is like a special kind of person, and I can relate to the like
being around certain people that are like just having fun drinking, and then at a certain point you're like, okay, this isn't like, where are my people? Where are the people that I want to be around? And that's cool that you found it in that way. So you're at the Joe Dispenza retreat and you just meet someone who's from Austin, and then you guys just make this plan. We're gonna go get in the water.
Yeah.
Okay, and then it starts from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, would you say that's like your community now? What has it turned into? Yeah,
I feel like it's where my heart is so much. I just love the people who show up each week, and I'm so grateful for it, and I get to feel so connected, and I think it helps me to, I love being able to serve in that way and just like help bring people together. I think my favorite thing is that there's so many people I meet in Austin, and they meet each other through the Comfort Zone community, and I'm like, that is the coolest thing ever. Or like people having best friends, they're best friends now that came on a retreat, like they met there. Like that is so cool to be able to provide something that then people, it just sparks a relationship. And that's the intention of it. Just, I know I felt so disconnected and felt alone, and I think I love my friends that I used to drink with. It was that I was craving though, like this really, like this authentic, deep connection, and I had social anxiety, and I was drinking to numb that, and I didn't know that, and I was like binge drinking. And so it was just the feeling I get when I'm able to be really present and sober and connect with somebody on a really deep level. And so yeah, I guess the question of what do you mean, I guess, by is it my community? Like,
is that your source of community nowadays?
Oh, I think multiple sources. It's definitely one for sure. Yeah.
So I do agree. Like, I think alcohol is tricky because it seems like it connects us, but I don't think it does. I think it really pulls you into your own world in a way where, and I have had the same exact experience where like I was just uncomfortable being around all these people and like talking, and alcohol let me just like let loose and just be me. But it also like didn't let me see other people. Like there's no real connection because you're so just in my own world. Do you drink now, or what's your relationship with alcohol?
Yeah, I don't drink now, but I haven't like proclaimed sobriety or anything. It's just not really part of my world. Like my partner doesn't really drink. People in my family still drink, and I have no problem with alcohol. I just don't have any desire really. But I'm not like, yeah. No. Cool. Do you drink?
No, I quit about a year and a half ago, roundabout. For me, it was I didn't have a good enough reason to continue drinking. And it's much easier for me to be sober, like absolutely nothing, than to like have moderation. Like totally. Moderation for me can just turn into doing it over, like too much more than I would like to do. So for me, quitting and just saying none was easier. And like the main reason I drank was to be able to talk to people. And a big part of that was talking to women like that I didn't know and was interested in. And around the time I was quitting, I was also facing that fear and just getting comfortable going and talking to random women in the park or at the dog park, wherever. And so as I was going through that process, I was like, okay, I can actually do this on my own. I don't need this crutch. And so then that also tied into like, I don't need alcohol anymore. It doesn't need to be a part.
Yeah. It's so good to identify that, like just even the awareness of why what you're using it for. Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, because it's like, of course it was fun, and I've always enjoyed like the feeling of alcohol, but then there's like the opposite, which is the hangover right afterward. So that part kind of balances out. So I'm like, I think the hangover probably is worse than the fun I get. And then if I can meet people without it, then there's no more reason. There's no need for it.
Totally. And I think it helps too, just the social environment, if you've got good community that doesn't drink or that's not part of their activities. Because I know I was living in Mobile, Alabama, and that was just like the world. And I'm sure there were tons of people who weren't drinking in Mobile, but in my perception, that was all there was to do. Yeah, so Austin's a really special place that there's a lot going on that doesn't involve alcohol, which is so helpful. Yeah,
that was a thing for me in Madison, Wisconsin, where I went to school. It was like there was nothing else. Like that's what it felt like to me. It was like it's alcohol or just nothing. Like there's no fun
Yeah.
if you don't have alcohol.
Yeah.
I remember me and a friend I had met this new friend at the gym, and so we worked out together. And then I brought one of my other friends, and we like hung out with him for a night, and we like played Monopoly with his friends. And then we're walking back to our apartment, and my friend who I brought along was like, dude, that was the first time we've had fun without alcohol.
Aww.
And it was just like mind opening. Like I didn't realize, oh, you can just have fun. You can just do things that are fun, and there's no need to be drinking. Yeah. So yes, it's very true that like what you're around will have a big factor on that, and who the people and what they're doing. Because if everyone's drinking, then it does feel like, okay, I gotta be a part of this.
Totally.
Yeah. So you went to school. Was that when you were drinking primarily?
Yeah, I went to LSU, so it was a big emphasis at LSU. It's I think it's pretty known as a party school. And I mean, I was drinking even in high school. That was like such a value system. I was the youngest in my family, or I am the youngest in my family of 4. Mm-hmm. So I have 3 older siblings, and I would just, like, the cool thing was to drink or like sneak out. And so that was like what I was always chasing. And like, I definitely...
Did your siblings like get you alcohol ever?
I think my brother did, for sure, probably. He was 2 years older than me, but my sisters were a little bit older, like before I was probably still in middle school when they were drinking, and they were already in college. But yeah, my brother for sure got me sometimes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay,
so you're the youngest. It was like cool to do in high school.
Yeah, for sure. It was like all we thought about was like, how can we acquire the cheapest vodka? And yeah, because in my world, I didn't, I was on the tennis team and I did other things, but that was like the social thing to do. I grew up in Houston, and North Houston, and that was in my purview because of what I grew up around. That was like what the cool kids were doing. Yeah. Okay,
and you graduated from LSU, and you were a chemical engineer.
Yeah, I was a chemical engineer.
And how was that?
It was great.
What led you to engineering?
Yeah, so all growing up, I was good at math and science. Those were like always my strong subjects. I really loved them, and I did really well in school. And then I actually wanted to go to med school. I remember that being on my heart in high school. But for some reason, I thought, well, if I don't get into med school, then I want to have like a really solid degree to fall back on. Not just like, I don't mean to say that like a biology degree wouldn't be solid, but to have something that like if I was just an engineer would be like a really good career. Mm-hmm. I don't know where that came from, like that thought, like looking back, because I didn't know what an engineer was. I just knew I'm good at math and science. I think this is a really good career path. Mm-hmm. And so I just kind of got on the path, and it was like, I wasn't really thinking long term, or I wasn't really thinking like, what do I actually want to do? What does an engineer do? It was like, I picked this path. I'm going to take this class. I'm going to get an A. I'm going to study. And I worked really hard in school, and I did well, but I never really checked in with myself until I was at a job, and I realized, and then, I had a bunch of health issues. So in college, it was my senior year, actually junior year, I kept having these just like shortness of breath, and I was numbness in my toes. I was bloated all the time. I had been a sugar addict like my whole life, but it really didn't start affecting me majorly until college that I knew of. Like I was gaining weight. I felt chronically fatigued. I was also really abusing Adderall. I got diagnosed. My teachers, and when I was younger, because I would just disrupt a lot in class, I had a lot of energy, but my mom never medicated me or like got me that until college. I did get prescribed Adderall and Vyvanse, and just definitely abused it and was burning myself out, emotionally eating. That was my coping mechanism, and drinking. But after my first year of college, I really was like so school focused and like singular focused that the only times I went out, I would just get completely blacked out, because it was like the one time in like 3 months, and it was very toxic cycles. Then after graduation, moved to Mobile, Alabama, which I love Mobile. It's such a special place in my heart, and I had so much fun those like first, because I had like a good paying job, and I had met some really great friends there, and I was drinking a lot though. That's like what we did in our pastime. But I had developed a deep passion for nutrition and holistic health. So the drinking I was drinking vodka soda, which I like thought was a healthier thing I could be drinking.
That's a point as well. Yep.
Yeah, but I was still drinking it a lot. But I developed all those health issues I mentioned. I went to 6 different doctors, all of whom could not really find anything quote unquote wrong, but I knew something was really off because I was having all of the, like, I would have to leave somewhere because my toes were numb and I wouldn't be able to breathe fully. So, and I kept having to go to the emergency room. And so finally I met a holistic practitioner, and she was the only one that asked me what I was eating. And at the time I thought I was eating pretty well despite the binges on sugar, like every so often. But she knew pretty much instantly it was the foods that I was eating that were driving so much of the inflammation in my body and the symptoms in my body. So long story short, I ended up like completely revamping my eating. This was in 2012. So I did the Whole30. It was like brand new. And if anyone on this podcast doesn't know what that is, it's like a 30-day, basically you're eating just whole foods, meat, vegetables, fruit, nuts, seeds, if you tolerate those, eggs. And I failed my first attempt. I didn't even make it 24 hours. I actually, for 3 months, I went like gluten-free, dairy-free, egg-free, and soy-free, and I didn't really feel any better because I was eating a bunch of gluten-free processed food. And so finally, I committed the Whole30. Didn't make it 24 hours. I ended up binging on a box of gluten-free brownies, and then I tried again, and I made it those 30 days, and those 30 days changed my life. My whole body, all my symptoms went away. I felt so energized. It was like a light turned back on in my system. I had so much energy, and I just became obsessed. Like, why did I go to 6 doctors who never once asked me anything about this? And I felt so awful. And then this functional practitioner being the only one who asked me that, and how much just I didn't know. And so I started just diving deep into the research. I became super passionate about that over the next 8 years. And then as an engineer, I just kept studying that. And for an elective in college, I'm sorry, I'm kind of going back and forth. For my last semester of college, I had an elective. I chose public speaking. And it just so happened that the topic we all had to choose on was something around food. So I did mine on sugar addiction. So for 6 months, I just studied sugar addiction because I had been such a sugar addict and was still binging on food, but even if it was like healthy food, but just understanding the chemistry in the brain. And it was fascinating. And so even though I became an engineer, I worked for 4 years as an engineer at Honeywell. Over that time, I ended up getting a certification in coaching and started building a coaching business. And then after 2 years of building that, I quit my job and did that full time. And then on the path, like became a yoga teacher, breathwork teacher, and then moved to Austin, started the Comfort Zone Fridays and leading retreats. So it's kind of evolved, but that was like my overall journey.
What was it from a place of desperation that you did the Whole30? Like, like, I just need to do something.
Yeah, I remember having a call with my mom, and I was so frustrated because I was just having to go to the emergency room and not understanding why. And then it was definitely out of desperation. I was so bloated all the time, had just gone from this hyperactive kid to someone who like could hardly get out of bed. And I just knew something was so off. So yeah, I was definitely out of desperation for sure.
Wow. And it was just eating. Like that was
a big pillar. It was definitely more than that. Mm-hmm. Just my stress levels in engineering school, staying up countless hours. I was taking Adderall. So there's all this like adrenal burnout for sure was a huge contributor. But it was just like I tell clients, like if we've got a bathtub and we are filling it, we've got a capacity to handle a certain amount of stress. And we have all these different streams, all these different faucets that are pouring into that bathtub. But then eventually, if one of them's, if we've got too much, it's going to overflow. And that's what happened. It's like I had a capacity to handle a certain amount, and food was a huge contributor of how much inflammation and stress I was adding to my body. And it just like broke or spilled over. And so, there are definitely other contributing factors, but that was a huge piece.
So with the Whole30, did you stop binging at that point, or was there more to that?
Yeah, there's definitely more to that. So after the 30 days, it was the first time in my life I didn't crave sugar to the point that I had. Like there was some separation from it. I definitely wasn't healed or cured of emotionally eating or even sugar addiction, but it was a huge step. Like just basically a detox. Like if you were on drugs, like that was like a detox for me for 30 days of not eating it. But then it was after that I basically lived like a whole, like 2 years eating that way, just very, very strict and rigid, which looking back maybe was a little, definitely like some extremism, but it was just fear. I didn't want to eat something that would flare me back up. So, and I think I was scared of I was scared of certain foods. But I think I needed those rigid rules in those first 2 years to just have a path, like have structure, and kind of like what you said with alcohol, like the no, just being able to like all or none was helpful for me in the beginning because I wasn't able to moderate. And then slowly I introduced other foods, and then a big part of it, I was still binging on even healthy food. So I was at work, stressed, and I'd be reaching for what I packed for lunch, be just eating all day long for stress. And even if it was healthy food, I wasn't hungry, and I was still like overeating, and I would still have these chronic, like, just I'd feel so guilty and like shameful that I had overeaten, because I'd feel like crap when I overate. My stomach would hurt. And so that was kind of the next step in the evolution. It was like really understanding what foods are working for my body, what's going to help me thrive, but then also the question of just, why am I eating? Am I actually hungry? And what am I using food for? And I was so tired of being in this like deep guilt and shame spiral. And I think I was addicted to that too, just the guilt of overeating. So it's just this like breaking through that patterning was it like the next step.
Yeah. So it's funny. The binging on healthy food. There was in high school, my mom would always put out this like bowl of clementines, and I would just lay on the couch and just like munch on them. And one time my girlfriend at the time was like, I've never seen anyone do that. And I had eaten a whole like big size bowl just of clementines, probably like 15 of them. So yeah, it doesn't have to be unhealthy foods for binging. And then yes, so let's talk about that like spiral, their pattern of feeling guilt or shame, and then using food to cope with that, but then that causing more shame. Is that something you went through?
Oh, totally. So yeah, the pattern was like, my whole life was using food to cope with uncomfortable emotions. So if I was super stressed, overwhelmed, if I was sad, lonely, bored, so if I was super stressed, it usually was the trigger, then would binge, overeat, kind of go unconscious. And then when I kind of came to, it was like this deep shame and guilt that I had just done that. And so then, like now I talk a lot about parts work. So there's a part that would binge to numb out from the discomfort of those difficult emotions. And then if you're familiar with IFS, the internal family systems, a manager part, another protector part of my psyche would come on to hyper restrict. Oh my gosh, we just binged. I can't believe you did that. You're going to gain weight. You're going to be unlovable is like ultimately the story. So we need to hyper restrict. Okay, you're going to eat 200 calories tomorrow. You're going to go do an intense workout, and then eventually either would fail to do that, or would induce more shame on myself, and then here comes the binge again. And so it was just this like perpetual cycle, and it was so draining because I was constantly thinking about food all the time, whether it was eating food, what am I going to eat, what am I going to restrict, or just feeling guilty and shameful. It was like 99% of my brain capacity I felt like was just going to that, and it was so exhausting. And so breaking free from that, a huge part was the actual foods themselves, but the next part was being able to, like, things like meditation, things like the parts work of just being able to take a step back and see the loop of what was going on, being able to breathe with that and have compassion for myself. And it was just like these, and also just the conscious awareness and pause, like the power of pause. And this is so cliche, but whenever I would binge, I would just really let myself feel like, oh, I don't want to feel this, and not like shaming myself not to do this again, but getting to a point of just like, oh, like this is what I'm doing to myself. It was like I never actually just sat with like, oh, like what am I doing to myself? And so it was just realizing the cycle and then just pattern interrupting that. Like if I started to shame myself, just like gentleness, compassion, loving those parts, breathing, and just saying that, next time I'm gonna slow down when I'm eating, bring more awareness. And it was just building this muscle. And now when I eat, I practiced for so long of breathing before I eat, putting my food on a plate, sitting down, slowing down, putting my fork down. But it was like these habits around food that really helped. And then just really learning how to tune into my body where my fullness was. Because I wouldn't do that. I would just eat and eat and eat. And then afterwards be like, oh, shoot, I'm so freaking full. And so it was realizing just being aware, just like mindfulness of like, something we learned in my coaching program was like dividing your plate in half, eating the first half, and then pausing and just letting that food hit you, and just like, how much do I still want to eat, and how do I want to feel after this meal? And it was not out of like a place of shaming of like I shouldn't eat more. It's just like, how much do I actually want to eat, and how do I want to feel after this meal? And like realizing my value system changed from needing to calorie restrict to be super skinny and lose weight all the time to just like, I want to feel like energy. Like I want to be so energized, and whenever I overeat, it like tanks me for the next 3 hours because I'm just feel like shit. I feel I'm just in this loop of guilt and shame, and it's so draining, and it's so it's just unproductive. Mm-hmm. And so it's just like starting to have that like future projection of like when I'm eating, I would think about like, if I eat more, am I gonna, like, I don't want to feel bloated and be out of commission for the next 3 hours. And it was like, okay, well, I'll just stop. And if I'm hungry, I'll eat again. So like all these, like, it was really just going from complete unconscious eating to conscious eating with a lot more compassion.
Yeah. And discerning those two, like it's not that you're shaming yourself, but you're just connected to, this is how I will feel if I do this.
Yeah.
And then, okay, I don't want to feel that way.
Yeah. And then if I did overeat, it wasn't like, because I wasn't conscious every time I ate. It was like trying to build that muscle. And then if I did overeat, I'd practice the, like, realizing the part that then came on was like, you overate, like shame. It's like, okay, it's okay. We're learning. What can I do better next time? It's going to be okay. This is going to pass. Like, this feeling's going to pass. And just being gentle with that part too. And in parts work, it's like getting curious about that part. Where's she coming from? What's she trying to protect you from? And reminding her, like, we're loved. We overate. Great. We're still loved. And we can do better next time. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I tried one time, which really worked, but I never did it since then, is I was like unable to sleep one night, and I was like, I really want to eat, but like I probably shouldn't. And so I ended up letting myself eat, but the entire time I had like a journal out and just wrote my like stream of consciousness as I was eating. And it was like, I'm feeling this. Okay, the first bite tastes like this. It feels like this. And I just was like super conscious of what was happening. And the crazy thing is, I didn't finish everything I had prepared, which is very abnormal for me. So I like put it back in the fridge. I was like, okay, I'm good.
Yeah.
So that's like one thing for me that has worked, is just like pen to paper. This is how I'm thinking. This is how I'm feeling. Getting super aware.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I think a huge part of it is, I know for myself, it was just distracted eating, or eating, standing up, eating, like the conditioning of finishing my plate, even though my physical body doesn't need this more, but it's on my plate, so I'm going to eat it. And even like the discipline it takes when you have bites left on your plate to actually leave them, or to like put them in the fridge and like put them as to go. And that's difficult at restaurants. If other people are still eating, then it's super easy to just be like, just like continue eating. Yeah. So it's definitely it's a muscle, and it takes intention. It takes energy to be conscious. Yeah.
One other thing, it's funny how in America we are like so diet focused, and we have the biggest problems with obesity. Like I think that has to do with what you've talked about, which is that like when you're overly harsh on yourself, it leads to future binges or whatever the disordered eating is that people go through. And there was one study I'm thinking of that was in this book, Willpower. I forget the authors' names. I think it's 2 authors. But in the study, they have people come in, and there's a group that is like the dieters and a group that's not dieters. And the first thing they do is they make them drink like a large milkshake. And so everyone does it. And then I think it might have actually been too large. It's like a bunch of sugar. And they consume all of this. And then they're just given like these snacks afterward. And they're not really told that this is part of the study. They're just like, you can just have these snacks if you want.
Yeah.
And the dieters eat more of the snacks than the non-dieters. And the reason why is because the dieters have already gone off the diet because they had the sugar. And so they're like in this like, fuck it mentality. This day's gone. I might as well take advantage of this, you know, to just mindlessly eat. And I could really relate to that of like, when I have calorie tracked in the past, when I go over and then I'm like, oh, fuck it. Okay. I'll just have whatever. Cause I already lost. So.
Totally. It's such a loop of the mind to do that. That's such an interesting study and makes so much sense. So many, and I don't know, I did that for sure. Oh, the day's already ruined. I already ate a cookie, so I'm just going to eat the rest of this whole bag and then I'll start again tomorrow and I'll restrict. And it's so toxic. And I think, there's so many factors I feel like of what obesity in this country, but a huge one is that this like deep shame.
So I think you have, you definitely have an insight into this because you've done it yourself. You've gone through this and then you've also coached people on it. So what makes the difference between like, because I'm sure people go through like, you know, relapses or they are doing well and then they have a binge. What makes for a good like program in terms of how do you lead people to success in this?
Yeah, I think it's the two kind of big pillars are the actual nutrition piece and there's the actual like practical piece, how to set yourself up for success, reducing resistance, things like Atomic Habits teaches, like any habit that you're wanting to build, how can we reduce resistance, make it so easy, we do a lot of simple swaps. Because there is a big piece that's like, if my current habit is going to the, you know, ordering Uber Eats, McDonald's, versus I'm going to spend 3 hours in the kitchen cooking something, like what am I going to do when I'm tired? So it's like how to minimize the effort and make it so easy. And a lot of it's just education. People, and there's so much knowledge out there, but it can be really overwhelming. People are like, I don't know what to do. So then they just don't. So simple swaps of like improving ingredients. And then when your body's hormonally functioning better and you're eating more real food, those cravings are going to go down. And it's less like what happened for me with the Whole30 was like, I had more conscious control because my body wasn't just running on this like hyper processed sugar addiction. So there is a huge piece on like what you're putting in your body. But I think the piece that diet culture misses so much is the emotional piece. And when people have a binge, and if I'm working with someone and someone has a binge, it's like awesome. Let's study that. Like what happened? Because look how many days you've had that have been amazing, and let's study your successes. What was different about this day? And let's go into that. And I always share this poem, and I don't know it by heart, so I won't share it. But it's, if anyone wants to look it up, it's an autobiography in 5 short chapters by Portia Nelson. She basically says like, I woke up. I'm not going to try to say it, but it's essentially that like when we're trying to do something new and create new habits, like we're gonna fall into a hole. And it's going to take the first time we do it, it'll take a long time to get out. And then we go down the same street and we fall in the same hole. And it takes us maybe a little bit less time to get out. And then we go down the same street and we see the hole, we still fall on, but we get out really quickly. And then we go down the same street and we see the hole and we walk around it. And then the chapter 5 of this poem is, then I walk down a different street. So it's like just the gentleness when we're trying to do something differently that we have. If, like for myself, if I've binge eaten and used sugar to cope for 20 years of my life, and then all of a sudden I expect myself not to do that, never again, that's just unrealistic. And so it's like the acceptance, like to build that into your plan that like there's gonna be falls, and you get to use those as ways to learn about yourself, to set yourself up better next time. But it's taking the time to look at that. Because a lot of times, and I know for myself, this is the case. I did it. Here's a habit. I kept being late. So I go to F45 and I love it. And I just kept being like 5 minutes late. Like every time. Like, Ellie, like, you know what time it starts. Like, why do you keep leaving 5 minutes late? And it was because I wasn't like actually sitting down to think through like, okay, why am I actually being 5 minutes late? And then I did that this time. I sat and I literally was like, think through. Like, how much time would you actually need? Like, when do you really need to leave, and what's getting in your way? Or you don't know where your shoes are. You don't know where your keys are. And actually thinking through those things. And then guess what? I was on time this morning because I actually sat, but I kept just being late because I wasn't pausing to reflect on like what are the contributing factors. So when we do this, like you become your own experiment and you study yourself. And that's why you're like with the journaling, like that's huge, because when you're writing it out, you're actually looking at it. And I think that's why it's helpful to have someone in your life that you can reflect with, because there's dedicated time for it. Then you're actually pausing to sit and think through versus just continuing to run that same neural pathway. If you're trying to build a new neural pathway, you may have heard this analogy, but like if I've done something for 20 years, I have this super highway in my brain that it is so easy to take that highway because I don't have to think about it. We're just going, and I'm going to go eat sugar because I just got really stressed, and that's what I'm used to doing. And now I'm trying to build a new neural pathway, which is like, compared to the super highway that's so easy, it's like a path in the forest that is so filled with trees that I can't even get my way through. I'm gonna have to like push branches aside, and it takes so much more effort. But if I keep taking that path, then I'm clearing those trees out, and it's getting easier every single time I go down it. And maybe sometimes I just don't have the energy to go down that forest path, and I'm going to go on the superhighway. Awesome. But tomorrow, or in this new moment, like this next moment, I can go down the forest path, and I'm going to make that one easier. And eventually that one becomes the pathway you take on default. Mm-hmm. And the superhighway starts to get, I don't know what the analogy would be, like starts to build some like blockages, and it's actually harder to take that one, but it just takes time. So I think it's having patience and compassion with yourself. And a mantra I always use for people is like, every moment is a new moment to choose new, or like consciously to like choose the thing not the autopilot conditioning, like to choose the thing that you're wanting to choose. Yeah. So sorry, I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah. I think that's one of the problems with shame is that because I'm thinking about it now, and the times when I've had these experiences where I go off the rails and then I just don't even want to think about that happening. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, we're done with that. Let's move forward. That's never going to happen again. But like you said, with being late and all this, like then I never get the chance to actually look at like, why did that happen? Like, what were the things that led to that? Yeah. Because it's a big part of willpower is not just like, oh, I can grit through it. Like I'll make the decision not to eat the cookie. It's actually all of the things that lead up to that moment where you are like consciously considering the cookie. So yeah, I think getting past the shame or the guilt part of, not wanting to even think about this bad thing that I did, and actually digging into like, okay, what caused that? What led me to that point? Yeah. That's huge. Are you still coaching today?
I do, but not nearly like it used to be like my full-time mm-hmm. thing. So I have one or two clients here and there, but it's not like I was. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you have a reason for that? So I used to help guys who were afraid of approaching girls because that was something I was afraid of and mm-hmm. that I worked through. And then I got into a relationship and I kind of just fell off of like, I just lost part of me felt a little bit like an imposter because I was telling them like, you got to face your fears. Like you can talk to her. It's okay. But then I'm not doing it because
you're in a
relationship. So that was a part of it because before I was like showing them like, I'm doing this. I'm terrified right now, but I'm still doing it. And I got to be like a role model. And then a part of just getting past that fear and then being in a relationship just took me out of the passion. So I'm curious is that related, would you say, or what has taken you away from coaching? Is there just other things?
Yeah, it's kind of both. I guess maybe similar to that. So because I was like it was such a huge part of my life of learning the tools and using them on myself and having developed and then wanting to help the person who was really struggling because I knew like how shitty I felt and how much it consumed me. So I was so passionate about it, to helping people. And I coached hundreds of people. I used to do groups. Then I think it was just that my journey, it was like what I'm learning is almost like what I want to teach. And so that was kind of something that was like a huge part of my life because I really struggled with it. But now it's not really, it's second nature now. And I still want to help people. And I'm so happy to speak about it. But like it's almost like where's my edge now? And that's like almost what I want to help people with. So like I'm very into like just new things, like with the retreats, like becoming a yoga teacher, breathwork teacher. Like breathwork was so awesome, and going to doing more on like my own like spiritual path and like learning more about that and just wanting to share more of those things. Like connection and community is what I wanted so badly when I moved to Austin, then be able to build the community and then the retreats. Like that's what lights me up right now. So I don't know that I'll not, like, I still love speaking about the emotional eating, and there's so much, that's just one manifestation of addiction, like of an addiction. So I love studying the mental health and stuff, but I just feel more called to help people right now in build connection and community and work on mental health as more of a holistic, not just solely focused on food. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it just kind of like, I did like solely coaching so many people full time for like 6 years. And I think also it was just like, I'm just excited to do other stuff too.
Expand it a little.
Yeah.
And that's something that can happen is you can be super excited about something, but then realize like I can actually have more impact if I do this a little differently, or if I spread out how I'm doing this. So,
totally.
Yeah, that makes sense. What's advice that only you could give?
That only I could give? I feel like what's coming to me is almost like I could give advice, but I don't think I'd be the only one that could. I feel like we all share the same like one consciousness, so like someone's probably had
something similar.
Some advice, maybe that's from my path. I think something that I can give them, I'm sure other people have thought this too, but I think a big piece of advice is, I need to remember this for myself all the time, is just like listening to those sparks. And I think like the reason the coaching has evolved into what it is because like my spark evolved. It evolved away from coaching that at one time was like my biggest spark. It lit me up. I wanted to study every book. I was reading it all the time. I was like, I couldn't get enough. And then it changed. And now what am I like so excited to consume and to share and to try to force doing something because I know the knowledge and I definitely can help. And I love speaking about it, but what is my soul being lit up for? And like, I want to follow that. What is being called of me? And so I guess that would be the advice of just listening to those inner sparks. Even if you don't know what they're going to do, right away, you may not think that they're, this spark might not, I don't have a 5-year plan that it's going to make me X amount of money or give me this much success, but it's just feel in my body, it feels like something I want to do.
Following those.
Yeah.
Okay. So you believe in God, correct? Okay. What does that mean to you?
Oh, what a good question. What does God mean to me? Love, like this energy of love, and God means to me, I have a lot of, I think, meanings for myself when I think about God. One of the meanings to me is love, and like my guiding force, my protector, and also like then other ways I think about it is like God is everything too. What do you think God is?
I don't really. So what I've learned the term for recently is a physicalist. I believe in the physical world as it is, and that's really it. So I don't really believe in like a force behind. But like there's an interesting idea there, because if you were like, oh, this is a mysterious force, like, yes, I believe in like forces, gravity, electromagnetic forces, like those kind of things, yes. So it's a very hard distinction, but I don't believe in like a creator of the universe, like a conscious entity behind any forces. Yeah. I'm curious how your belief has developed over time.
Yeah.
And how it's changed.
For sure. So I grew up Catholic. Very wasn't like a super strict Catholic family. Like we'd go to church when I was little. We'd go some Sundays and then on Christmas and Easter. But I was always felt really connected to God. Like I remember when I was little, I always used to pray every night, and I'd pray for all my stuffed animals, and I would pray, and just like always felt that deep connection to God, and like would go to God whenever I like was scared or pray for something, and that evolved into, I think what really the biggest shifts have been definitely with psychedelics have really opened me up to different just views of God and just my visceral feeling of God. And I'm still so just learning and love learning and feeling and exploring different views. I even in like studying yoga and studying just even like visceral embodiment of like certain moments in breath work where I just feel so connected to my heart, or when not even just within psychedelics, but psychedelics help me almost like open channels and like feel God so viscerally in my heart, and then like during the day I can touch that, like there's times like I did a Vipassana retreat, the 10-day silent meditation retreat, and there was just like, it's like the 4th day, and I just was crying because puppies exist. I know that sounds maybe so silly, but like my heart was like blasted open, and I felt God. When I cry and I'm like deeply cathartically crying, I feel God. And then when I'm just like sit and conscious, but it's so hard to describe in words what I mean. Just so much love. And when I'm connected to service, and when I'm like out of my like small self and like self-focused, like what do I want? When I can be outside of that, and like moments throughout the day where I am, and it's so beautiful. And I'm so curious because I was going to ask you, like, with the physical world, like, what is love then? And then in my mind, I was like, I guess it's like the chemicals, like oxytocin, and like, what does love mean to you?
Yeah, I think it is a feeling. And so there's two different sides of things. Like there's the physical, like you can explain consciousness physically, I believe you can. But then there's also the first person experience of it. And that's a completely separate thing. Like that experience of what is it like to be Ellie, like being in your head. You can't, there's no science for describing that. You just can't. And so that's a completely different thing. Like the experience of these chemicals is not the chemicals themselves. And so love has its own meaning, but it's just an experiential thing. For me, it's what does it feel like? And that's, I think, pretty incredible. That in my view, that somehow consciousness came to be through evolution. Like it's amazing. It's a beautiful thing that happened.
What do you believe of consciousness, how consciousness came to be?
I think it was just a evolutionary side effect. It was like, for some reason, I don't know, I don't know where it came, like if all animals are conscious, I don't know, maybe. I think a lot are. I think my dog is pretty conscious. But yeah, I think it was just like a benefit in terms of survival, that if these animals are more aware of themselves and they have like these like ways to feel pain or feel joy, that they're more likely to survive. Like if you felt like great joy when you ate an apple, or like when you hold your child, you feel a lot of love, you're more likely to protect that child. That child is more likely to survive and have children. So I think it was just an evolutionary thing that we became conscious. But then at the same time, like, and this is an argument Richard Dawkins has, which he's like an evolutionary biologist, and he always is explaining these things in a scientific way. But he also says something where he's like, just because a mother loves her child, because like the reason that she developed this love was because it made her children survive more, and her genes are in her children, so then that makes sense that would, but that doesn't change the love that she has for her child. She still feels that love completely. Like it doesn't change the love itself just because there's like a scientific backing that's like based in like survival and evolution and all this. So I think that's how it came to be. But then I think at the same time, it's like this magical experience that we get to have now, which is very cool.
Yeah.
That we get to live through that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. What is something you're struggling with right now?
Something I'm struggling with right now, I think time allocation. I work full time for a retreat center in Costa Rica, and I just have so many ideas, like so many things I want to do and pursue and I'm excited about. And it's just like really organizing my time and what things that just like, I think I just want to do everything right now, and just like slowing down and remembering like there's time for everything. Like what really do you want to do right now? What can happen along the way? So I think that's probably the biggest struggle is just like, where do I really want my time to be going? An abundance of time, and like time abundance. I want to not feel time scarce, just feel like abundance of so much time, because we do have so much time.
Yeah.
And like in a day, even in a day, there's so much time. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I feel that too. One of the things I'm working on is just like using time for what's like really important and not letting myself be pulled in different directions. Yeah, there's like so I read this book, the Daily Stoic, if you know Ryan Holiday. So he's got a Daily Stoic book, which is like a meditation for every single day of the year. And one of the ones recently was about how as humans, we will like protect our property and our money and hold on to it so tightly and not let other people get their hands on it. But with our time, we're just like, oh yeah, like I'll waste my time on whatever. And we just let ourselves be pulled in every direction when time is like the most valuable resource that we have. And so I've been working more on not letting myself get pulled into like stressful things and like, oh, I need to do this right now. This is so important. I need to get this done. And instead take a step back and be like, what's actually important outside of this like emotional moment where I feel like this thing needs to be done.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've been trying to step back and use my time in ways that are more meaningful.
Yeah. What do you feel like your biggest distractors are?
I think that work can be like, if I see like a Slack message that pulls me in and I'm like, oh, I need to respond. I need to figure out what this is about. So anything like, message related. Sometimes I will go into like kind of self-induced distractions. Like I'll think like, oh, I should check my email, or like, oh, I should go check on this thing, when I really like don't need to. So it's partially self-induced.
Gotcha.
Yeah. What are your like distractors, would you say, on your day-to-day?
My distractors, they're like pinging thoughts of like certain projects that I know these like creates false urgency that I need to like remember this thing. My phone for sure. Social media can be for sure. I'll like realize I'm just will fall unconscious to my phone. Those are probably the biggest ones. And then work, I can be similar like that with the Slack, like we don't have Slack, but our Google Chat at work, that can be distracting for sure. Yeah, and it's just like, it's so simple, but if I'm intentional with how my day, how I start my day and like what time I want to do things at, and like that's decided, if there's an open day, it's just like willy-nilly, and then it is like so many things can just pull, or if I get a text message from somebody and then get sucked into that reality, it's so wild. Yeah,
definitely.
But then like the balance too with like just the synchronicity of stuff too, like allowing flow, because if it's so ordered and like I'm only going to do the things that I said I was going to do, then like not allowing for those beautiful things that may come in that change your perspective or inspire or make you feel better. Yeah,
that's very true. Yeah, one example of that, I was like, oh, I need to be more like intentional with my time. And then the next day I'm like sitting down to work, and then my friend texts me and he's like, do you want to co-work at this place? And then I was like, okay. And then I did do it, and I was like, that's like I think that's a good thing to get a little bit pulled off track.
Yeah.
Is like, yes, I'll drive over there and we get to have a good conversation and I still get some work done. I think that's worth it.
Totally.
But it is definitely, it's good to be aware of it, aware of the things pulling. What does your dream life look like?
My dream life looks like, it definitely involves lots of nature. So lots of free time, like lots of space and time to do creative things, creative outlets. I do want kids in the future. And
how many?
Great question. Like 3, I think would be great. Would be a good number. But I don't know. I don't have one, so I don't want to. I don't know. It might be
you'll have one,
crazy, and I'm good with one.
That's enough.
I do want a retreat center. Me and my partner, we both want a retreat center somewhere to be leading like retreat programs and people coming. Ideally in the mountains, and that there's water running through the property. Would very much like to. Part of my dream life is just like being of service, like being so connected to purpose and service, and being able to just lit up about whatever I'm doing is a big part. So whatever that path is, but like my dream life is like just being so lit up and being able to be energized for other people too. And for like, yeah. What's your dream life?
Oh, no one's ever asked me. Thank you. Mine, definitely a family. I would like to have a lot of kids. I would like to live with, so I would like to have like a decent amount of land. I like just like I like nature. So I'd like to either have like woods or just like open and like have Reba, give her space to run around, my dog. And family, I would like to live with other like families nearby that I know, and that like my kids know their kids, that kind of thing. Yeah, working on things that I just am lit up by. Same thing. I think that's the gist of it.
Yeah.
I need to think more about it. I ask everybody, but I've never been asked. So,
yeah, I love being asked, and it makes me sit and like I really want to go journal that when I get home. Like, what are the elements of it?
Yeah.
Even if I don't have it like defined, like the feeling of what, things that I like.
Yeah, no, but I think a big part of it is living nearby my friends, like literally like next property or like on the property, something like where I'm just like around people that I love all the time. That's a big piece. Yeah. All right, Ellie Rome, thank you so much for coming on. Do you want to tell people where to find out more about you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you can connect with me on Instagram at Mindful Belly or at Comfort Zone Retreats, or come any Friday and or Saturday for an event in the morning. Would love to have you.
How can they get on like the mailing list?
There is, I can send you a link if you want to put it in the show notes, and they can.
Awesome. And any retreats coming up?
Retreats coming up. We have a June 4th to the 8th, 2025. Whenever you're listening to this, we're going to Kauai, Hawaii. It's going to be 5 days, 4 nights, adventure retreat. It's going to be, it's Comfort Zone Retreats are personal development retreats meet adventure retreat meets yoga retreat. So we get off our phones for 5 days and really dive deep into our own personal development and get in nature and just really create lifelong friendships.
Awesome. Well, thank you for making it on, Ellie.
Thank you, Will. I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you. All right. Bye, everybody.